Well, welcome back to my humble abode. Chapter 6 is about emotions. And it asks a question in there, and I have to agree. I can't think of a time when I was in a conflict there was not any emotion. Because if I didn't have any emotion, there really wouldn't be conflict, you know? I mean, think about it. If it really doesn't matter to you, why would there be a conflict? We bought a truck a while back, and I asked my wife what she wanted. She said blue. Okay, that was great for me. Everything, all the other choices, mine. It just had to be blue, and so there wasn't any conflict if there's not emotion behind it. Darwin, the book talked about the um, evolution and how we all have emotion and inherent, and there's things that frighten us. And I couldn't help but think that yesterday was real stormy, thunder, lightning, all that other stuff. I have a dog that's part blue tick hound and part Labrador retriever, and she just stood there and shook. If I was at my desk, she was under my desk. If I went to the bathroom, she was in the bathroom. She was afraid. She was afraid, and I thought so many times when the book was talking about, people say, well, there's nothing to be afraid of, nothing to worry about. That's your perspective. If the emotion's real to whoever's experiencing it. The book also talks about I'm not a jealous person, and a lot of times we think that about ourselves. We tend to think. If you ever filled out a survey, it's called self-reporting. Most of the time, it's really not considered accurate because a lot of times the surveyor knows that you're going to put down the answers they want to see. Speaking of surveys, when you do one at the end of the semester, I really want you to be honest. If I was an idiot, tell me I was an idiot. So, but most self-reporting, and when I thought of the "I'm not a jealous person" thing, I realized that when I was younger and dating, really wasn't dating, just friends with a young lady, and then she went out with somebody else, and it was like I was jealous, but we weren't emotionally tied, and we weren't dating, and but I didn't realize I had those feelings until something pointed it out. So a lot of times we're going to get these emotions pop up that we really didn't even know existed. I really like the way the French and Spanish languages deal with this. Instead of, I am angry, I have anger. And if you can start putting it in that mindset, especially over some of the trivial stuff that you get into conflicts with, it, it's not so much about you, it's just about this came up. So feelings function as facts. And like I was saying, I told my dog it's okay, don't worry about it. But she was still terrified. Now we shoot here all the time, shoot skeet, target practice. She hates that. Fourth of July, New Year's comes around, fireworks. She hates that. So she usually stays fireworks. She stays inside with me because I can't. The light messes with me. I can't watch them. But the lightning and thunder. You and I are both cognitively aware, and we know that it's not going to hurt us. But there are some people actually, and you may be one, and I apologize if you are, that are afraid during a lightning or thunderstorm for various reasons. But I couldn't tell the dog, don't worry about it, it's okay. I told her all the time, but it didn't matter. It was a fact to her that she was in danger. And emotions can't be ignored. A lot of times we try to ignore our emotions, and that really doesn't bother me. I'm okay. And really, it bothers the hell out of you. emotions, especially in a conflict, they can't be ignored. If you blow it off and say, don't worry about it. I'm not angry. And you let it go, if you avoid and you let it go, it's going to build up. Emotions affect thinking. I'm sure you've been told that a million times in your life. Don't make a decision when you're angry. Don't go shopping when you're hungry. Love is blind. How many times have we heard that one? Love is an emotion. And you have blinders on it. You don't see reality when you're in love with somebody, especially the early stages of it. So there's some misconceptions of emotion and conflict. One of them is emotions can't be controlled. I did not go through each one in the book because it would have made this a 2-hour long thing, but there's a few I wanted to point out. Emotions can't be controlled. How many times have you been told or told somebody, don't worry about it? You can't just shut it off. If you're angry at somebody for something, if you're hurt because somebody did something to you, if you're infatuated with somebody, cognitively, you can tell yourself, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. But you really can't control emotions. You must ignore emotions to resolve the issue. You can't ignore them. Emotions hinder decision making. If we could all be robot-like and not have any emotions, or like some of the characters in the Star Wars and Star Trek scenarios, it would be nice. But emotions are part of the decision-making process. And if you don't take them into consideration, the decision you make won't be a lasting one. Emotions should not be expressed at work. I don't buy that. Especially if you have a good working relationship with other people. If they are upset, you can tell. If you have a bad working relationship, a lot of times you can tell somebody's upset, or it's okay. Emotions are for the weak. That's definitely not true. Unfortunately, society that we live in often says, men don't cry. I cry. I was watching some stupid TV show the other day. My wife walked in and said, "You crying?" I said, "Yeah." No. But, emotions, everybody has them. It's nothing to do with weak or strong. And anger means hate. You can't love somebody if you're angry at them. That's a crock. I really think that's one of the reasons our divorce rate is so high, because people fall in love and they're blind. Emotion. Love is blind, and then they start seeing the real person, and then something happens, and they get mad at them, and I hate you. How many times my kids said they hated me just because I was being a parent? How many times I told my sister and brother I hated them? How many times I told my parents I hated them? You can be angry at somebody and not hate them. You can dislike somebody and not hate them. I've been married 40 years. There's many times that my wife has not liked me, and vice versa. So, anger doesn't mean hate. And we're going to get into it later on, but a lot of times anger comes from hurt. So, negative function and negative emotions function in a conflict. Emotion enables confrontation. Like I said earlier, if you're not emotionally involved in it, there probably won't be any confrontation. But when you get hurt angry because your significant other is always making plans and not considering how you feel. It builds up, and eventually it's going to enable the confrontation. And oftentimes, an emotion triggers a familiar response. We have, over the years, and we'll talk about this again in a minute, uh, learned to react to certain things certain ways from the family we grew up and everything else. So when you have that same emotion that you've had in the past, it's going to trigger a familiar response, and that's a way that you're probably going to react to that emotion. Emotions intensity changes. It's not, how many times have you been mad in hell with somebody and eventually you were laughing about it? It changes once you start listening and they start listening. And your particular personality is built via emotional behavior. If you think about one of the other classes I did on tape, I talked to you about a rubber band ball, how your culture is created by different layers of rubber, like a rubber band ball. Well, it's the same with your personality and emotional behavior. You learn to react to things emotionally, and it gets layered on, and that's who you are over time. Now we can change those things, and we experience emotions as good or bad. A lot of people immediately think of negative emotions or bad emotions um, when we're talking about conflict. But a lot of times the good emotions are in there as well. If you allow each other to, if you listen and they allow you to speak and they listen, a lot of times you'll find out the emotion of love or caring or friendship is there and it's stronger than anything else, and this other stuff doesn't. We become emotional because something is at stake. Sounds repetitive, huh? Maturity helps mediate emotion. The book goes on to older adults, more mature people, they don't get as upset. And I found that true with myself. And by the, I told you before, I'm 62. So, but a lot of my friends don't get nearly as upset as we did when we were younger. Now, a lot more things bother us because we don't have as much patience. But it's, doesn't, you can mediate conflict in your emotion the better you understand it. And the more practice you have, of course, the better you understand things. And relationships are defined by emotional expression. How we get along with a significant other or intimate, as the book calls it, and how we get along with our coworkers, a lot of times is based on how we are emotionally. Think about the coworkers you've had in the past. Some you got along great with because they were happy-go-lucky or they were um, generally honest. You know, does this look good on me? Nope. You can take that from somebody that you get along with, but there's other coworkers that you've had that their emotional um, expression just didn't sync with yours. They were uh, an Eeyore in the Winnie the Pooh cartoon. They're always down and I'm so tired and boring and it just your relationship. If you don't click, then your relationship it just doesn't go well. Now they have something called the Harvard Negotiation Project, and they're talking about core concerns. The book also references their website, but I didn't bother to put it in here. But the best practices for positive emotions is appreciation. Now, think about this. How many times have you felt better because you knew somebody appreciated you? But on the other hand, how many times have you not shown your appreciation to others? A lot of times we expect this from everybody else, but we don't give the same thing. So, if you want to be appreciated, you need to show appreciation to others. Autonomy. You want the autonomy to make your choices. You don't want somebody making them for you. And you need to allow other people to have autonomy too. Status. What's your status in the relationship? Uh, how is it affecting this communication? And role. What's your role? Are you the boss? Are you the worker? Are you the husband, the wife, the mother, the father, the child? All those things come into consideration when you are trying to be positive about things. So, positive emotions, we can't just expect everybody to be kind to us. We've got to be kind to others. We can't just expect everybody to do what we want. We have to do what others want as well. Finding feelings. Feelings are often difficult to talk about, even if you are in a very good relationship. A lot of times you think about that best friend you can talk to. I'll be honest, I've been married 40 years, and there's some feelings I have that I have a difficult time talking to my wife about. But have you ever been on a plane and somebody just opened up to you with everything? That's an interesting phenomenon because a lot of times people feel freer to talk to strangers. And a lot of times on the internet, you can tell people on the internet whatever you want because of the anonymity. But somebody close to you, sometimes it's difficult to discuss feelings. If your significant other has hurt you, a lot of times it's hard to figure out how to tell them you hurt me, or I'm angry at you, or I have anger, or I have hurt. But you need to find those feelings and figure out how to talk about them. Functions of negative feelings. Anger and fear are the most commonly thought of negative feelings when we talk about conflict. More often than not, that's the first thing people jump to. Anger and aggression are different. Anger is being mad at somebody. Aggression is being physical. Anger can be a wake-up call. I'm mad about this, and I've got to do this to fix it. I'm mad about the weight I'm gaining, so I need to do something about it. Revenge is only temporary. You think about, you get mad at somebody and want to keep with them. We all do. And sometimes you say things in haste. I wish you were dead. I'm going to kill you. How many times you watch a cop show and they bring somebody in for an interrogation and they say, well, you left this message on their on their answer machine said, I'm going to kill you. Oh man, I didn't mean it. I was just mad. And it turns out when you watch those cop shows, that's never the person that did it. Not the one that killed them. But revenge, there's a saying that revenge is sweet. I don't know about that. I've gotten back at people and it only ruined our relationship. Revenge is best served cold. What that basically means is you need to think about it for a while before you do it. And generally, once you think about stuff for a while, it settles down. A lot of times, though, when you're angry about something, it just gets worse. Expression is not necessarily cathartic. One time they said, that there's some TV movie or whatever guy yells out his window in New York, "I'm angry as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." It might feel good for a moment to get it out, but if you get it out, you haven't solved it. So it doesn't necessarily fix things. When you are angry or when you have anger, you need to avoid creating harm. I don't know if I've told this to this class or not, but one of the things I do in my public speaking classes, give them a tube of toothpaste and have them race to see who can get the toothpaste out the fastest. And then I tell them put it back. You can't put words back. So if you are angry at something, avoid creating harm. Think about what you're going to say prior to saying it. Would you like somebody to say that to you? Because a lot of times what you say in anger isn't really what you meant, but you were mad as hell. Seek information. If you're angry with somebody or somebody's angry with you, try to find out why. And I know it's difficult at times. I've come in, my wife's been mad at me, and it's like, what's wrong? No, I don't know. If I knew, I wouldn't be asking. Sometimes, though, seeking information isn't that simple as what's wrong, because they're mad and they don't want to talk. So you have to slow things down a little bit. Direct your anger at the person you're angry with, not uncontrolled venting. We talked about this in one of the other chapters, that if you go fuss at your coworkers about the manager, that'll get back to them. And if you are going to vent, make sure it's a close, confident, close friend that you can vent with, or go see your local pastor or counselor. But, just lashing out at everybody and uncontrolled venting because you're mad at one person except them, it doesn't help the situation. It doesn't make you feel any better. Reflect, calm down, and think. You have to figure out what's going on. You have to calm down. If you react or act in anger or rage, you're not going to get to the bottom of things. If somebody else is acting in anger or rage towards you, tell them that I'm not going to talk to you till you calm down. Be courageous. Stand up for yourself. If somebody's angry and calling you names and stuff like that, stand up for yourself. And be aware of nonverbals. I love nonverbal communication, especially for a blind guy. It's pretty weird. I can tell. I listen to fluctuations of voice, which is nonverbal, and you can do that as well. Think about when you're on the phone with somebody that you really care about. When you're on the phone with them, you can tell if they're happy or sad. And you're talking to them, go, "What's wrong?" Nothing. "Oh yeah, there is. What's wrong?" So be aware of the nonverbals. Arms crossed, yelling, throwing things. But listen to the voice. Fear and anxiety. We often talk about flight or fight. Well, there's a third F in there, and the book talks a little bit about it, and it's freeze. Sometimes you're so afraid you're going to stand there and fight. Sometimes you're so afraid you're going to run. Other times you are immobile with fear. You can't do anything. You can't fight back. You can't run. You're just stuck. And a lot of times there's this something happens, and then we get angry, and then we get afraid. Anger, fear sequences in the book. But fear is what, and it could, a lot of this goes to the stuff we're talking about in anger. You know, what is causing the fear? Unfortunately, I can't make my dog understand that lightning and thunder ain't gonna hurt her, but she's afraid, and she can't fight it, and she got nowhere to run to, so she just tries to hide up under my feet. I think she guesses I'm gonna protect her, like I can stop a lightning bolt. Um, hurt, hurt in this case does not necessarily mean physically hurt, but psychologically injured. You know, when somebody hurt you, they cheated on you, they made a decision without you, you got passed over for promotion. You look for somebody to blame. It's like, damn it, they hurt me and it's their fault. A lot of times it's our fault, but we presume it as somebody else hurting us. Yeah, I applied for a job to be a national service officer for blind veterans to help them get VA benefits. And I didn't get the job. And I was hurt. And I wanted to blame somebody. But then I actually asked the guys that were doing the interview. And the guy they picked had 30 years experience doing it. I got zero. But I could do it. I could learn to do it. So, I was blaming them, but it was my fault. I didn't have the experience for the job that I applied for. And when somebody hurts us, it's often hard to repair. And think about that in your own life and your own relationships that you've had so far. If somebody you trust and care about hurts you, a lot of times you can't repair it. You have to earn my respect back. You have to earn my trust back. And a lot of times people just can't let that hurt go depending upon how hard it was or how deep it was. Humiliation. This to me, there's all kinds of humiliation, but one thing popped in my head when I was reading this was bullying we talked about before. Especially since I've got, grandchildren in middle school, high school, and elementary school. Other kids will say something to them, and pick on them, humiliate them in front of other people. It's devastating to your identity. It injures your identity when other people humiliate you. And the book talks that a lot of times the only person that can help is some bystander, some outsider. Because you're frozen when they humiliate you. I don't have a quick comeback. I can't run and hide. They're all laughing at me. And that's where we as other human beings need to step in. Sadness and depression. Sadness slows the person down. You ever known somebody that was really sad? And going back to the Eeyore comment I made earlier, Eeyore is the donkey that moves and talks real slow because he's sad all the time or depressed. But sadness and depression can be a motivator. I'm depressed and I got to do something about it. So it can be something that gets you going. Gender differences in sadness and depression. This I found interesting. Women express sadness to cover up anger. Nobody ever told my wife that. Trust me. When she gets mad, she gets mad as hell. She don't act sad about it. And men express anger to cover up sadness. And I reflected on my life, and there's been more than once that I was sad about something, but I was mad as hell at everybody else. So sadness also um, it can just it's hard to you can't tell somebody, well, don't worry about it, it's okay, because something is in there, and just like we talked about in anger, you got to find what the problem is. Emotions, too many emotions can overwhelm people. Too little, if you express emotions too much, you can burden others. If you have too little, uh, it's a distorted expression. I'm fine. I'm fine. Nothing wrong. Something is really wrong, but you're keeping it buried. Okay, the next section of the book is disgust, contempt, and revulsion. But they talk about disgust and revulsion together and then contempt separately, so that's what I did. Disgust and revulsion. Understand where it's coming from before you speak. If you're disgusted by something, before you say that's disgusting, figure out why it's disgusting to you, why it's revolting to you. And disgust and revulsion can have a cascading effect. If you get disgusted by this or revulsion by that, then it can cascade into other stuff. And contempt, on the other hand, is sometimes used as a weapon. And that's really bad when you use it as a weapon against somebody. Contempt for something. I mean, think about disgust, revulsion, and contempt in our current political situation. Do you have contempt for any of those politicians? Do any of them disgust you? Shame, guilt, and regret. When we break our own social norms, we feel shame. Why did I use that word? I haven't used that word since I was a kid. I should have never used that word. So when we break social norms, we feel shame and guilt. Why did I flirt with that girl? I'm happily married. I didn't do anything, so I shouldn't feel guilty, but I feel guilty because, man, I really regret flirting with her when, you know, I it I mean, it felt good. Somebody was flirting with me, and but it's not right because I disrespected my wife by doing that. So we break those social norms, and we have that shame, guilt, and regret. Uh, a lot of times with shame, we either lose face or self-esteem. When um, many Asian countries, losing face, being guilty, being shamed is justification for committing suicide. I brought shame onto my family. Um, no, don't do that. We all make mistakes, but culturally, it's to them it's appropriate. Shaming others is contrary to conflict resolution. When I was a kid, my mom would make me feel guilty about something. I was a little kid. I caught a frog and I wanted to keep it. It misses its mommy. She would make me feel guilty, shame me for being greedy kids that wanted to keep the frog. And the frog didn't know who his mommy was, but I mean, it worked. I let go of the frog. I let it go. But we're adults now, so shaming it's contrary to resolving conflict. Shaming somebody else, you might win, they might give in, but trust me, the conflict is still there. It's like blackmailing somebody. You'll get what you want, but now they're carrying this with them. Regret can motivate. I regretted not telling her that I loved her when I was 16. I wonder how she's doing. I regret not going to the top of Pikes Peak when I was in Colorado. I think I'll go to the top of Pikes Peak. I regret starting smoking. I regret gaining weight. A lot of times when you regret something, it can motivate you to fix it. Functions of positive emotions. Well, they spent more time on negative than they did on positive because more often than not, we don't think about positive emotions in a conflict. But joy, love, and laughter are all emotions that we experience. And if we are experiencing them, it makes it a lot easier oftentimes to resolve a conflict. We have a positive spiral that we're talking about. And as opposed to a negative, they didn't really mention it in the negative part, but blame, accuse, get mad, angry, blame, accuse, it spirals down. Positive spiral, give affirmation. Let them know you're thinking about them. Give them one of the parts that they want. Something's important to them. They in turn give to you. So it can be a positive spiral as well. Happiness, serenity, and contentment. It increases motivation. If you have a happy, serene, content workspace or relationship, you're motivated to keep it that way. You're motivated to work together. You're motivated to come to a consensus conclusion that helps everybody instead of win-lose. It unites the people involved. And you think about it, if you have coworkers and shifts, and there's some shifts that you sometimes you really love going to work because so and so working that day, and days that you hate going to work because so and so's working that day. So it'll unite the parties involved. Mid-range effectiveness. The book has a chart, kind of like a bell curve. Unexpressed conflict, unrestrained conflict, and in the center, the bell is the highest. Because if conflict is unexpressed and you both are fuming in your emotions, you're not going to come to a good conclusion. On the other hand, if you're both ranting and raving because you're angry and you're afraid and you're fighting this and fighting that, you're not going to get anywhere. So to be effective, you need to get away from the two extremes and get in the middle. Mindfulness is thinking about feelings. We have to be mindful when we're having a conversation with somebody. And we're going to have raw feelings. And they call them raw feelings because it's the book says uncooked. But if you are mad at something, if you're hurt by something, it hurts a lot. It's angry a lot. Uh, the book talks about heart. You can have a soft heart or a hard heart. If you're too soft-hearted, you can get a harder heart. If you're too hard-hearted, maybe you need to have some let some emotions out and become a little softer. Awareness is essential. Not only being aware of your emotions and the things you think, say, and do, you need to be aware of theirs. You need to be empathetic because use your heart, so to speak. Um, if you're empathetic towards somebody, you can understand where they're coming from, especially if they're the one that's hurt. A lot of times, we hurt somebody we love, but we don't mean to. We hurt somebody we care about, but we don't mean to. And then we can't understand why they're hurt. But unless we're mindful about it and awareness and being aware about it, we'll never figure it out. Be mindful, reflect, and reflective, not reactive. How many times I think I mentioned it before, a lot of times when you're in an argument with somebody, you're not listening to what they have to say, you're planning on your next statement. You heard one thing they said, and I'm going to rebut that, and this is how I'm going to do it. And you're thinking it out, and you know what you're going to say, but you're not listening to the rest of it. So be mindful and reflective. Listen to what they have to say. Think about what they had to say, and then figure out a way to say it to where you're not attacking them, but you're expressing your feelings, your emotions. Remain compassionate to others and self. You have to be compassionate to yourself and the other people involved. Be aware of triggers. What sets you off? What bothers you? Is it they left their clothes all over the place? Is it a nickname they have for you? Is it when my kids were like 16 years old? I said, when you drink, you have to figure out if you're a happy drunk or a mean drunk. No, we don't do that. It's like, yeah, right. You're 16. I was 16 once. I know you hit alcohol when you get a chance. Um, but I told them, if you're a happy drunk, make sure you got somebody to take care of you. If you're a mean drunk, you just need not to touch it again. So what are the triggers? If you're in a relationship with somebody and they get mean when they drink and you see them drinking, you know what the triggers are. The thing is, they need to figure out their own triggers as well. Vulnerability is courage. I like that particular part of the chapter because, we think of somebody's courageous as, the D-Day invasion soldiers that ran on the beach when they were getting shot at, and they scaled the cliffs, and the fireman that runs in the house that's on fire to save, whatever. But vulnerability is courageous. If you are going to open up yourself to somebody else, it's showing courage because it takes a lot of courage to open up. Express anger responsibly. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, is you have to express it. If you're angry about something, you need to let the other people know what you're angry about. But you need to express it in an articulate way, not, damn it, you pissed me off. Okay, what'd I do? You know what you did. See where I'm going? You need to express it to where, okay, this is what I'm mad about, and this is why. Distinguish between acknowledgement and venting. Okay, I'm angry. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm angry. Or you're going to acknowledge you're angry with me. Acknowledgement is, this is why I'm mad, period. Venting, you've all been vented to. You've all vented to people. So agree not to attack one another. And I guess this particular portion of the text was about an intimate relationship more than anything else. But I guess it could be in a deal making thing between companies. Agree not to attack each other. Okay, I'm not going to call you names, and I'm not going to put you down, and you're not going to put me down. And finally, and this is the first time the text actually said it, find the source. What is making this person angry? And I've mentioned it, I know in other lectures, my wife and I have had more than one argument about me hanging the toilet paper wrong. Well, after some time, we figured out it wasn't me hanging the toilet paper wrong. It's just the particular, as they say, straw that broke the camel's back. She was angry about something else. Well, when that happened, it was out of it. And don't get me wrong, it's not just my wife. I'm just as bad. I just didn't remember the times I get yelled at more than the times I yell. And I think we all do. The book talks about an XYZ method. And basically, if you tell somebody, when you do this, when you do X, in situation Y, I feel Z. The other option they talked about was when you do X in situation Y, I wanted you to do Z. So that's finding the source. If you're angry at me, okay, tell me what I did, because let's be honest, we've all upset somebody in our life and not really know why. It just didn't click with us, that it was going to be something that would upset them. Or sometimes we knew they'd be a little upset, but the old adage, get forgiveness instead of permission. But the XYZ method helps you to identify what the problem is. Actively listen to emotional communication. We talked about active listening before. Well, what you're telling me is, the way I understand it is so-and-so. But you have to listen to the emotional communication as well, not just the physical communication. When they tell you something, are they tearing up? Or are they getting soft-spoken because they're sad? Listen to all the clues you can get. Protect yourself from verbal abuse. If you are in a conflict with somebody and they are calling you names, and just say, look, I'm not going to take this from you. When you decide to treat me like an adult and have a conversation, I'll be willing to talk about this. Unfortunately, in my life, I have seen, not with me and my wife, but I've seen a lot of couples where one of them tried this and the other one got physical. That's a whole other can of worms. Use fractionation. I had to look up that word. Well, luckily I didn't have to look it up. It was in the book. But it's real simple. Take smaller bites. We got this great big problem. Okay. Well, instead of this great big problem, let's work on this part of that problem. This part of that problem right here. We'll get it fixed. And then we'll take on another part. Then we'll take on another part. You can't fix everything at one time. So take smaller bites. Use positive language. It goes back to earlier in the chapter when I'm talking about, instead of saying, you screwed up, this is a problem. How can we fix it? And when somebody does good, tell them they did good. Emotions are personal responsibility. I don't know how many times I have been told by somebody else, "That's okay. Don't let it bother you." And don't get me wrong, I'm just as guilty of saying that to other people as well. But I try not to now that I've learned. Um, if I have anger issues, I can change me. If you have anger issues, I can't change you. If I have a drinking problem, I can change me. If you have a drinking problem, I can't change you. So you have to take personal responsibility. Now, whoever you're in a relationship with, if you point these things out to them in a calm manner, when you do X in situation Y, I feel Z, and they can take it upon themselves to change themselves and correct their behavior, but you can't change other people, and they can't change you. With the exception of when I was a 6-year-old kid, my mother would whip me because I didn't do what she wanted her to. She changed me quite often, but we can't do that nowadays. So that's chapter 6. I hope you're better able to understand the chapter now that I've explained stuff. Keep making the postings on the discussion. You're posting by Thursday, and 2 of your peers by Sunday. I hope the midterm wasn't too bad. The grades were decent. Some of you did real well. Some of you did as good. I'm sure you wanted to. The final is going to be just like that, except it's going to be the last 5 chapters of the book, and it's going to be open book, plenty of time. If you know the answers, write them down. If you don't know the answers, look them up. Any problems, complaints, questions, feel free. Last week's discussion was, what have you learned so far? Remember that because your end of term, you have a paper. And your paper is a self-reflection paper. What did you get out of this course? How did you become a better conflict resolution person? What skills did you pick up? Don't write on there and tell me I was a great professor because, it's nice to hear, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a personal reflection. How did you grow? Because it's all about growth, really. If you're taking this course and you never grow, why did you take it? All right, folks, you'll see me in the video next week. I won't see y'all, but sorry about that. Take care. See you next week. Let me know if you need me. Bye.